Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's installment of Election Detection. Pay no attention to the camera bouncing around, as it were. My table is just ridiculously unstable, much as your hosts. Now, today we have a very special guest joining us, or two very special guests, I should say, joining us in our discussion of Sweden today. Live, here is 2018, Charlie and Johnny. Hello, would you have anything to say?
Nothing. We are Swedish. We live here now.
Alrighty, thank you, 2017, Charlie and Johnny, for that little bit of insight. Sven, would you have them put down? Yeah, get the old yeller boom boom stick. Yeah, thank you. Alrighty, now getting going on our actual story of the day. Here is my illustrious co-host. What's his name?
It is me. What's his name, McGee? And we're here to bring you to the north of Europe to talk about Sweden and an historical event that just took place there. Breaking news, or at least it was when we wrote the story. By now you may have heard, if you did, cookie for you. If you haven't heard, yeah, have a cookie, you earned it. Maybe, I don't know. So basically, the Swedish parliament has collapsed, just like my internet. Now, this isn't as dramatic as it might sound. They just fell to a no confidence vote. Happens. No fires, no explosives, no invading French, no eating the prime minister in the streets. Looking at you, Netherlands. However, this is still certainly noteworthy as this gives Prime Minister Stefan Löfven the dubious honor of being the first prime minister in the job's 145-year history to see his government fall in this particular way. The government has had a bit of an unstable run since their last election in 2018. The ruling Red-Green coalition, not making this up, it is a Red-Green coalition. This one's for you, Steve Smith. Saw their share of the 349 seats in their parliament, the Riksdag, fall by 22 seats from 138 to 116. This left the governing coalition 59 seats short a majority, the lowest electoral support for a winning coalition since universal voting rights were introduced in Sweden. This was thinly patched when the Agrarian Left Party joined the Social Democrats and the Green Party in the Red-Green coalition, and the Center Party entered into a confidence and supply agreement with the ruling coalition. This gave the government a razor-thin lead of the opposition parties of 175 to 174, one seat off. This held until this past week when the Left Party withdrew from the ruling coalition. This break came as a result of a debate within Parliament over whether to maintain COVID rent controls in the country. The opposition, with the support of the Left Party, introduced a bill earlier this week that would end rent control on newly built or marketed properties. The Red-Green coalition opposes this bill, but agreed to consider it in an attempt to keep their minority government stable. However, impasses were soon reached when the Left Party chose to call for a no-confidence vote and the left government coalition. The no-confidence vote became the first in Swedish history to pass with 181 votes for and just 168 against. This left Prime Minister Löfven with two options. In this next week, he must either resign or call for a snap election. Should he resign, the Speaker of the House, Andreas Norlén, will enter into talks with the party leaders to attempt to form a new government. If that fails, a snap election is going to happen anyway. So this is a bit of a developing story, so stay tuned to our brand new Election Detection Online for news as it happens.
You know, this is one that we've got to be excited about for election detection online, because this only happened like 2 days from the time we're recording it, probably 3 from the time we post this. So we get to talk about this so much sooner than we would have before.
Compared to like, oh yeah, this is old news now, like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, pretty much. So what's your thoughts here? First Swedish government to fall in a confidence vote.
First of all, rip Red Green. You were my inspiration. Second of all, it's I find it interesting that the particular debate that led to this collapse being COVID rent control, because it's something that, I mean, our own country and the one down south of us are particularly struggling with right now as well. So.
Actually, I know it's a little off topic, but it's kind of on the topic of rent control. I was reading right before we actually started recording today. Apparently, the state of California has voided all outstanding rent from COVID. So basically, if you had outstanding rent during COVID, it's just gone now. Like the state's forgiven all outstanding rent, which is definitely an interesting thing to see. But it's it's sort of a universal thing right now that's kind of different than we would get in any other time, is seeing all these different countries all over the world sort of figuring out how we're moving past COVID and seeing how sort of dramatic a political effect that can have, like where we've seen in Sweden, where it literally took down the government.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a very high stakes sort of thing because if you don't handle it wrong, if you don't handle it right, who?
If you don't handle it wrong, you're not doing your job as a government.
You're right. I mean, yeah, if you don't handle it right, you're gonna see either a bunch of people, put out on the streets or a bunch of buildings being closed.
Yeah, exactly. The thing that I find particularly interesting about this one is it's not just rent controls, it's rent controls on newly built or newly leased buildings. So it's like if you have an existing building, you can keep the rent control. Whereas if you built a building that's just opening now, it's a case of it's not going to have rent controls, or maybe it is. And it's interesting to see sort of the dedication of the government to keeping the rent controls in place, of going, okay, yeah, no, we're gonna risk a collapse.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I
I
think,
mean,
yeah, no, continue.
yeah. I mean, it's yeah, part of the balance of is it going to be easy enough to form a new government over this
Yeah, pretty much. So actually,
compared to trying to bring a whole country of people out of economic collapse because they can't afford a place to live.
yeah. So speaking of forming a new government, as we saw, there's two options of which way this can go, and I haven't actually seen anything as yet on which of these is going to happen. You think the prime minister is going to resign, or do you think they're going to hold new elections, or which direction do you see this going?
I mean, if we've learned anything from other governmental collapses in that region, I think most likely is what's going to happen is they'll probably just attempt to try and call a snap election personally after seeing what happened with the Netherlands. And they had a big collapse very recently. And they kind of just did their best to kind of like, yeah, no, we're going to just form a new one. We'll caretake it through to the election, but then we'll go from there.
That's actually something I hadn't considered. Is that's the third in the area now that we've seen in the last year, because we saw this happen in Sweden, Netherlands, and Estonia now.
Right, yes.
Yeah. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where it goes, and as always, we'll keep you updated here on Election Detection Online. But I think that's just about all we've got to talk about on Sweden today. What would you say, Johnny?
I would say we live here now.
All
I
right.
apologize, Sweden. I'm so sorry. I was a dumb kid when I said that. I like the meatballs from IKEA.
Yeah, that we took that video in an IKEA, if you were wondering, back in the pre-COVID times.
Back in the pre-COVID times. What was that like again? Do you remember that? I
Yeah,
don't.
I don't know. I think the sky was purple or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, we hope you'll join us in the post-COVID times moving forward into the future. See y'all later.
Keep detecting electing.